Hello there, I'm Mini Squish, and welcome to my first Speedraw video. I got inspired to make this after watching ABD Illustrates Heartless video from a while back. Watching him redesign his old characters and talk about them so fondly reminded me of how much I missed what was essentially my first real set of original characters. At the start of planning and making this video, I just wanted to redesign them, but then I couldn't stop thinking about the story as a whole and decided the whole thing needed to be revamped. So without further ado, let's hop in. I'm sure we're all familiar with the Greek myth of Pandora's box, but just in case, allow me to summarize. Pandora, along with a box, were given to Prometheus's brother Epimetheus. The key to said box was entrusted with Epimetheus, and he and Pandora were told to never open the box. Pandora, who was deeply curious, stole the key and opened the box, which released all the evils onto the world. She hastily closed the box, but all that was left inside was hope. In this magical world where our story is set, that myth is true, and all of the evils spread out across the world and attached themselves to a particular few who became the embodiments of those evils. Our story follows Kiyuri, who, at the beginning of the tale, becomes the embodiment of, well, you guessed it, hope. This is given to him by his adoptive father, who, after finding him abandoned in the woods as a baby, raised him, secretly training him to become the next force of good for the world. We follow our hero as he travels the world, led by the driving force of hope within him, to wherever it tells him he's needed, and of course making some friends along the way. The hope within him also gives him the ability to discern between people with magic, as well as sense the evils and the people inhabiting them. In his original story, I had planned for him to be a bit more standoffish and unaccepting of his new companions, but I think this version of him is a bit more open to it. He is, however, less accepting of his new title as the embodiment of hope, feeling as though he doesn't deserve the image, or perhaps even feels as if he doesn't know how to be this all-good bringer of light. Other than that, though, his personality hasn't changed much. He's still sort of the strong, silent type. He's a bit blunt, which makes him seem mean at first. He tends to punch first and ask questions later, but at the end of the day, really just wants to help any way he can. He also hasn't changed too drastically design-wise. I kept his purple hair and eyes, as well as his pointed teeth, but changed up his hairstyle to be a bit more... how do I say this? Clean? He originally had this messy, run-of-the-mill anime protagonist haircut, but I felt like in this version he'd be a bit more into keeping himself groomed. I also swapped his odd, out-of-place and uncoordinated military aesthetic for a much more in-line and subtler, modern samurai kind of look, with the added tall collar to allude to his old scarf, because I always liked that, but I couldn't justifiably fit it into his new design. Possibly his biggest change, though, I gave him a prosthetic leg. Originally it was to give him more of a recognizable silhouette. I also felt like there needs to be more disability representation in media, but the first purpose ends up becoming almost entirely moot because I last minute decided I didn't like the design of his prosthetic and then changed it to better align with how he uses it, as well as making it a little bit easier to draw from most angles. Now for a bit more backstory. Kiyuri's original name was actually Kyoku, which is very basic Japanese for memory. Because in his original backstory, he started out more like a young child, probably around the age of 6 or 7, and was instead separated from his biological parents in an attack from that story's version of a big bad evil organization. Back then it wasn't even based on Pandora's box, I just kinda had a singular entity that was hope, and an evil organization that wanted to destroy him. No real reason for it, they just didn't want people to be happy or whatever. Anyway, he had gotten separated from them, or they were killed or something like that, and he lost his memory of the incident. And oh, did little freshman me love the irony. His name now is far less ironic, and quite honestly has a lot more thought put into it. Kiyuri is now named after a real-life type of flower, a form of yellow lily that grows on a tree. In Kiyuri's world, it's a rare flower that grows in very odd, random environments and is meant to symbolize hope. I love this name for him because it still has that harsh K sound that I liked from his original name, but it's a bit more elegant sounding. I also love the idea of him introducing himself to the first of his friends, and them asking Kiyuri, like the flower? And him just kind of exasperatedly responding, yes, like the flower. Another fun thing about his new name is that I had first designed this little box that his adoptive dad gives him. It's not Pandora's box, it's actually just a regular box with a bunch of trinkets in it. I had put these little tulip-esque flower designs on it, kinda just making up a flower, Then I chose his name, and as it turns out, the flower he's named after in real life kind of resembles the design on the box. Go figure, right? All in all, I'm much happier with his new design and characteristics, and I feel like I turned him into a much easier character to root for. But now it's time to get on to the first friend he makes. This next character is probably the one who has gone through the most redesigns in the past. Her base form has always stayed practically the same, though I did decide to give her a bit wider of a frame and darker skin than in her original drawings, but I could never really land a good outfit for her. I've probably gone through at least like 3 or 4 different costume designs while trying to figure her out. Even while redesigning her this time, I went through like 2 more before finally landing on this one. I also used to have a solid name for her, but have since forgotten what it was. Oops. Now I just call her Mai, which is a Japanese name meaning dancer. The reason for this I'll get to in just a second. For a long time, she had started the journey as a high school student at a boarding school, but when I got around to her and the next character's redesigns, I felt as though it was a bit out of place in the new setting. I had always imagined her as being really graceful and that her fighting style would involve a lot of magic and fun twirls and such. So having that in mind, I aged her up a bit and turned her into an acrobat, as well as a magician's assistant in a small, sketchy traveling circus, hence the name Mai. I say magician's assistant, but in actuality, she's the one performing the magic and making it seem like the onstage magician is doing it. Which opens up the door to a really fun introduction that I have planned, where Kiyuri sneaks backstage after the performance and starts singing the praises of the magic user and their skill. Then when the acting magician goes to thank him for the kind words, Kiyuri stops him to say, "I wasn't talking to you," and then starts addressing Mai. She originally started out as just someone to fawn over Kiyuri when he was still Kyoku, but I've since decided that I hate that, and she's now a more well-rounded character. She'll stand up for others hardcore if she feels like they're being treated unfairly, but has a hard time standing up for herself. Possibly because the people who often ridicule her are the ones who took her in, and maybe she feels like their treatment of her isn't unfair. But I would love to have her grow and realize that she deserves better, and work on being as much her own ally as she is everyone else's. Her main weapon, in addition to her magic, is a bow which she keeps hidden on her person in the form of this little charm on her bracelet. In order to fire it, she uses her magic to change its size and conjures up these sort of light arrows to fire. I have it in my mind that she only practiced with it in secret as something of a hobby, but ends up having to use it at the climax of their introduction. As a side note, I realized while writing this script I forgot to add her charm bracelet, but it's fixed now, no worries. I'm much more excited about her as a character now. I feel like this has really been her true form all along, and I just had to go dig for it. You may have noticed me mention a second character in her backstory, which we will explore some more right now. This right here is Mai's best friend. His name used to be Canon, the reason for which I can't remember. I think I just thought it was a cool sounding name, even though he's always been kind of a geeky looking guy. His new name is Corwin, which is an Old English/Gaelic name meaning heart's friend. I chose this name as a reference to a few things, the first of which being his main characterization as Mai's best friend. But also his parents are kind of cushy and sweet, and I feel like they would name their kids softly in hopes that they turn out to be kind people. And despite his gruff and mean-looking appearance, he actually is an extremely loyal friend, and secretly cares a lot about the main group. When I had decided to have him and Mai be part of a circus, it took me a good while to figure out what his part would be. The irony-loving part of me wanted to make him a clown, but ultimately decided that a knife thrower would be better suited for him. I did, however, keep the clown thing as part of his past. I.e., he used to be part of a different circus with his family acting as a group of clowns, but he ran away from that to become a knife thrower at his current circus. I don't know, I thought it was funny, and it has potential for future conflicts, so at this point you'll have to rip clown corn from my cold dead hands. As far as his design goes, his general vibe hasn't changed too much. He used to be very plain looking with just a white button-up and some slacks. I kept the fancy lad aesthetic, but turned it more knife thrower leaning. I also changed his small oval glasses to be these large circle lenses. and this time I actually put some effort into choosing a color scheme for him. I also gave him longer, flowy hair better suited for a performer, as well as added the poofs to the top of his sleeves to make him match Mai. A fun character quirk I gave him is that despite the fact that he's blind as a bat, he can't perform on stage wearing his glasses. This is partly for aesthetic purposes, but also he has terrible stage fright, and if he could see the audience, he would be too nervous and wouldn't be able to hit any of his targets. When he's not cripplingly anxious and can actually see, he's like the Robin Hood of knife throwers. As far as pure dedication and willpower go, Corwin is probably the most impressive of the main characters. He's also somewhat the voice of reason within the group, often telling Kiuri if he's being too brash, and being the driving force behind Mai's protective side. There's not much more I can say about him other than, despite him starting out as my least favorite of the main characters, he's now become quite near and dear to my heart. But not quite as much as our next character. I'm not even going to attempt to hide it, this next guy has always been my favorite. Though I've completely scrapped his entire backstory and original character design, I tried to keep his original bubbly personality. I also kept the fact that he is a literal angel. In the first version, though, he was just the plain biblical version of angels, but in this new world I've decided to make angels more like a different species altogether, one that just kinda lives among the humans. They're pretty much a rarer form of magic user in this world, generally accepted as a bunch of kind-hearted people that are a welcome surprise to meet. But enough about angels in general, let's talk about this particular angel. His original design was more akin to my taste as an emo teen. He had the classic long emo hair and pasty skin, but for some reason none of the rotten attitude towards life that you'd expect from someone who looks like they were birthed within a Hot Topic. Their original name was even Hatashi, which is Japanese for revenge, a name I picked in reference to his weird, edgy backstory. That has since been thrown away, never to be talked about again. His new name, Ramiel, is more befitting of an angel and means thunder of God. He is now, like most other angels in this world, non-binary and uses he/they pronouns. I also changed his skin tone drastically and gave him some pudge because I thought it'd be cute, as well as give him a different body type from the other three. I really put silhouettes into consideration when designing everyone, can you tell? Anyway, their new outfit is far less high school uniform and much more ethereal source of light, which fits much closer with his happy-go-lucky personality. You can't see it in this picture, but he also has a cute symmetrical wing design on the back of his crop top that disappears when he brings his actual wings out. As an angel, Ramiel has some kick-ass powers, the main one of which is the power to create and manipulate lightning. During this, his eyes and hair will glow with a pure white light. As a side note, I think it might be cool if later on in the series, they're going up against someone really tough and Ramiel has to use a lot more of his power, which ends up turning his hair white permanently. They don't just use lightning though. He's also very skilled with a long metal staff that they'll use when they want to go easy on someone, or if they're trying to conserve their energy. He's a bit more chaotic than most other angels in that he loves the rush of a good fight. They also tend to be louder and ruder than most other angels, who as a race are far more subdued than humans. I haven't yet decided on the reason for his personality being so different. Maybe they grew up closer to humans and adopted more of their mannerisms? I don't know, but regardless, he's a little looked down on by other angels for his behavior, leading them to hang around more with humans anyway, which is probably why he ends up traveling with our main group. As far as how he fits into the group's dynamic, they're partly there to help Mai balance out the harsh negative attitudes of Kiuri and Corwin, while also bringing some of that good chaotic energy that none of the other three can really bring. And despite the fact that he's so different from their original design, I still love him with every fiber of my being. But with all of them out of the way, let's look at the finished pieces. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want another video like this about the 5 evils, be sure to drop a like or comment. Let me know what you think, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye!